The moon rises full, and something ancient stirs beneath the surface. From medieval Europe to small towns in America, stories have endured. Stories of beasts that walk upright covered in fur, their eyes still human. They call them werewolves. Tonight, we dig into the myth, the madness, and the murders behind the legend. I'm Jorge.
Now, James,
Welcome to the I Can't Move podcast.
welcome. It's good to be back again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this particular topic.
Why are you so excited about werewolves? Is it because you're a diehard Twilight fan?
No, Twilight can suck it, no pun intended.
Because you're not a
Um,
vampire.
this actually starts back to whenever I was a kid. I remember being exposed to a lot of like classical monster movies, and I mean like Lon Chaney, you know, I would say Abbott and Lou Costello Meet Frankenstein
Yeah.
too, um, which is a comedy. But like seeing that stuff, I think I was just so fascinated with werewolf transformation or like any kind of like man becoming a beast sort of thing. Like that was just, I mean, that was just so cool. And I just really enjoyed it. And so I was very much into the Lon Chaney, Wolfman, um, and even just, whenever I was a kid, I also watched the History Channel and seeing, um, a few more things about like what werewolves were, I guess, and how they came, and how they like, became what they are. But it's been so long since I've seen that stuff, and so up until we had today's topic, I had to do a lot of digging, and the more that I looked, it was just so fascinating and so much more interesting. So this is kind of like a childhood, I guess, a childhood topic that I never really got to really dive into, or I don't know, didn't really care to.
Hey,
Uh,
I'll dive in with you, dude.
yeah,
Werewolves are super cool. Very, very cool. And I feel like my first memory of a werewolf, if you will, was from Beauty and the Beast. Now, theirs was a little bit, it's a Disney film, but you have a very rich prince or something, some wealthy man who has no love in his heart. A witch asks to come inside. He declines. She curses him, turns him into a beast. And the whole idea, the curse can be broken if he loves, but guess what? No one will love a beast. So that that was kind of my first interpretation of a werewolf. And then all the Halloween stuff you see with little figures and whatnot around.
yeah, absolutely. And I do like seeing, I definitely like seeing other versions of werewolves.
Hmm.
The only thing I don't like is the Twilight Vampire Diaries kind of werewolf, or should I say what is it, CW? CW kind of werewolves. Put,
We'll get to some of that. I have a note about one of those.
yeah, yeah, we'll talk more about that, but I want to see some effort, you know.
Hmm.
So to kick it off, we'll go ahead and talk about the origins of the legend. So
All right.
there is a Greek myth was actually retold by a Roman author by the name of Ovid. And Ovid was a Roman author. He did a book called The Metamorphosis. This is book one. This was written in 43 BC, but I'm not seeing whenever he died, but he ended up taking Greek mythology and he transformed those stories into Roman mythology. So, for instance, you would hear stories like Zeus that would for with the Greek mythology, and Roman mythology that would be Jupiter.
Mm.
So, one of the interesting things that I found was a story called Metamorphosis. Essentially, what it is that it's when in this particular story, it talks about the gods being furious about how wicked humanity had become. And so they demanded punishment. But Jupiter, also known as Zeus, calmed them down and chose to speak for himself. And he explained that he had heard rumors of mankind's corruption, and hoping that they were false, he left Olympus disguised as a mortal to see the truth with his own eyes. Now, unfortunately, what he saw was way worse than what he had been hearing. So mankind had become way more wicked than what he thought. So, traveling through Arcadia, he arrived at the palace of King Lycaon. He arrived late at night, and he started to offer divine signs that a god had come among them, and the people began to worship him, but King Lycaon mocked their reverence and decided to put him to the test. He wanted to see if he was actually a god. So what he goes ahead and does is he murders a hostage. Some say that it was his own son even by
Yeah. It
and
was the
he
youngest son. And
yes.
his other sons had an involvement with the butchering of the youngest son to serve the meat to Zeus.
Yes. And so you'll hear that he slit his throat and then cooked the flesh and served it to Jupiter or Zeus.
Hmm.
Well, the thing is that Zeus knew exactly what he did, and it absolutely enraged him. And so Zeus revealed himself, struck the palace with lightning, and then Lycan fled into the darkness. So as punishment, as Lycan was running, he ended up turning into a wolf. And you'll see that he, grew gray hair, large fangs, all that stuff. So it's a very interesting story. I think it's a really big reflection on humanity. I think you could even probably argue that it was inspired by Genesis, just because later on they end up deciding that because humanity is so wicked, that's whenever they send out a great flood,
Sure. Yep. Copycat the Bible.
right? So I thought that was reading that story, I was extremely interested already because obviously you can tell by the name of King Lycan where we get the term Lycan, which in
Yeah.
Greek it comes from the Greek word Lycos, which does mean wolf. And then Lycaon, how we actually saw it in the story,
Hmm.
his name does mean wolf-like, or it's the wolf-like one or the wolf. And the term lycanthropy is actually a combination of two Greek words, lykos and anthropos, which literally means wolf man. So
There
I
you
just
have
thought
it.
that was so freaking cool.
Yeah, it's definitely that story of Lycan trying to serve human meat to Zeus, and the punishment was turning him into what we would call werewolf. Was one of the earliest myths or sources I could find for the source of like a story of where a werewolf actually came from. And
Right.
I just wanted to also add in the beginning like what my interpretation and understanding of a werewolf was before doing research into this. So I wrote this down. So my understanding was a werewolf is assuming male. I've never seen a female werewolf in a lot of lore or whatever, but is bitten by a mythological creature, aka a werewolf, at some point, and survives the attack as infected with a chimera type virus. The infection begins when the subject's blood is infected with the werewolf's saliva, and it slowly infects the host over a matter of time until the full transformation has happened. Wolf, or the host is exposed to a full moon after being bitten and the transformation happens. There were some stories of men, like only men being attacked and bitten on a full moon, and transformation can't occur until the next full moon. It was kind of complicated, flip floppy. Other stories that I've seen in films were the werewolves were part of a bloodline instead of being victims, which I feel is a popular one these days, which I know we'll get into some of those. But that was
Right.
kind of like my understanding of what a werewolf was.
Yeah. And another thing too, one thing I was sort of thinking about was like, that story, even though it's a retelling of a Greek story, that message of werewolves is probably literally in being like, okay, we'll see. That's, someone must have actually seen a werewolf or someone must have actually seen something supernatural, and that's where that comes from. But I think ultimately that was really just a poetic way of trying to explain why we are now, like just the beginning of humanity, because in the Bible it talks about how men were becoming extremely wicked, and the world was becoming extremely corrupt, and so that's the reason why the flood was sent. And so
Their thoughts were filled with evil all the time.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
really what it is it is showing you just how monstrous people are. I guess I don't know if you would say it's a double entendre because they showed a metaphor and they showed a metaphorical. They told a story with a
Hmm.
metaphor, and then of course there was a more literal instance of the guy turning into a wolf. But it's a metaphor for people are wicked and there's a monster on the inside of us, and they just exposed it. They exposed the monster.
Yeah, because that's what it is essentially. It's like, okay, I will turn you into literally what you are, a monster. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's you're right. It's a metaphorical transformation.
Ended up coming across more Norse warriors. These particular Norse warriors were called the Ulfhednar, which means wolf warriors. So there were two types of actually there was three, but because the third one was I think it was like a hog warrior. But the two I'm talking about that I'm going to focus on is going to go hand in hand with each other. So there was two types of warriors. There was the Ulfhednar, and then there were the Berserkers. The Berserkers, which what the Berserkers were, was that they wore the hides of bears, while the Ulfhednar wore the skins of wolves. Now, the Ulfhednar were berserkers who called upon wolf spirits. So they were berserkers first, and then they became the Ulfhednar. And they were both warriors, and they were mean and crazy. Berserkers are the reason why we get the term berserk. Like you lose control, you go crazy.
Yeah.
These people would like gnaw on the edge of their shields and they would foam at the mouth. What they did was that they both served Odin. They fought in a trance-like fury, and they were and they both believed that by wearing skins of beasts, they could become something more than human. So, just like I was talking about before, the Ulfhednar being a type of berserker who actually called upon wolf spirits, and they entered into a trance-like state known as Berserk Gungur, which that it's from that term that we get berserk. So in battle, they were said to act completely rabid, biting their shields, howling like wolves, and charging with no armor. They had shields, but they didn't have armor. And they believed that Odin gave them strength beyond pain and reason. So they were crazy. And so they wore their hides of bears, while the Ulfhednar wore the skin of wolves. They would just go into a frenzy in combat.
The animal hides that they wore, it makes me think of superheroes that they receive something like, for example, the Green Lantern, he is given a ring and a lantern. Or who's the guy in the Marvel universe that uses magic?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange. So I know he's got, magic with him, but he has his cape. So it's kind of like that. It just makes me think of that their exchange from wearing something or be giving something gives them their power why they obtain it.
Yeah. In fact, we kind of see that throughout the superhero trope of some people really only have their powers by what they wear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happens all
Like
too often.
the Juggernaut in X-Men, the really big guy, I believe he was a character in the new Deadpool movies, but I believe the origin story for him is his helmet was some kind of like mystical helmet that he found, and when he puts it on, it turns him into the Juggernaut,
Oh
which
well.
gives him that strength. Yeah, so he's not just some mutant; it's
Yeah.
enhanced.
What we end up finding with these warriors that call upon spirit animals, what ended up happening is that Europe ended up having Christendom. Like they ended up having Christianity. They ended up adopting Christianity. So around the 10th and 11th centuries, the Norse kingdoms would end up converting, and then you would have old pagan rites like the calling upon wolf spirits and bear spirits and things like that, um, which berserkers, that also uh, translates into bear shirt. These things would not survive because of Christianity, the calling upon animal spirits, because eventually what would happen is they were looked as demonic. And in Denmark, Christianity took firm root that by the late 900s under King Harold Bluetooth,
What was it?
his name was King Harold Bluetooth.
Bluetooth.
Yeah. So he would end up taking on that same idea of like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore because it's demonic. In Norway, you had King Olaf Tryggvason, I think that's how you say his last name, and then later Olaf Haraldsson, or also known as Saint Olaf. He ended up spreading Christianity by 1000 AD. Iceland would later convert, um, and then Sweden would become Christianized in the late 12th century. So you see this mass spread of Christianity. And so a lot of these guys ended up just completely demonizing all that stuff, and they were like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. That's bad. And so what you'll end up seeing later on is that the Ulfhednar and the Berserkers, they completely banished. They were written off as sinful, and that came to a complete stop. They completely got rid of that kind of stuff because it was seen as heresy and a form of possession, which doesn't surprise me.
Oh yeah, it's total possession. I mean,
So,
when they perform some kind of ritual and put something on and they become something else, it's total possession.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I kind of have even just like going into, whenever you look at werewolves, vampires, anything that has to do with becoming something or being infected by that. If I'm being honest here, I think that what these are examples of, or what they resemble, is sin. I think that's what these things resemble,
Mm.
because you have, well, maybe I could go into that later. I could probably wait until the end of the episode to kind of make that, but I'll explain further on why I believe it's sin. Because I was kind of thinking about that during this time that I researched it,
Yeah.
but it is very interesting. But just by what they were explaining, it sounds super demonic for sure. Yeah, so another cultural parallel in Native American tradition. So whenever we're talking about werewolves, that would essentially mean transformation of some kind. And with them, with Navajo legend, they have the Skinwalker. In Navajo legend, the Skinwalker is a witch or a shaman who uses dark ceremonies to take the form of an animal or um, whatever else it is. But often it's either a wolf, a coyote, an owl, or a bear. The term that they have for it is called the Yi Naldushi, which means with it he goes on all fours. It's not necessarily the same as a European werewolf, but skinwalkers are humans who choose to transform through sort of taboo rituals, but it's not so much by curse or moonlight. What they represent is supposed to be corrupted power, like a medicine person who turns their sacred connection with nature toward evil. So in Navajo culture, even speaking the name aloud can invite the danger, which just kind of goes to show how deeply the fear of transformation runs in that tradition. As far as becoming the beast, so this was actually probably the most interesting thing that I found with werewolves is that during the time of witch trials, apparently they were also having werewolf trials too. Like they associated witches and werewolves in like that same realm of like demonic stuff.
Hmm.
So
Black
so
magic.
right. And so they had the most common explanation for becoming a werewolf was that you made a deal with the devil. You have like by the late 15 through 17th centuries, they had a huge fear of witchcraft. They were like so paranoid about that stuff, man. You could tell on your neighbor and be like, "Yep, I saw them dancing in the woods," and they'd be like, "Get them
Hang
now."
him.
Right, like the crucible. So the church had already largely replaced older pagan explanations for shape shifting. They, with animal spirits, curses, or divine punishment. It was they had replaced those explanations with one unifying idea, and that was if a human could become a beast, it was through a pact with the devil. And this shift reflected the religious worldview at the time that, every supernatural act had to come either from God or from Satan, which I feel like that's fair.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
You know, you know,
Supernatural, yeah, it comes from one or the other.
Right. Now, how they went about their trials, I mean, obviously, whenever you put humans in charge of something, something's going to get completely jacked up.
Hmm.
But I mean, but that kind of principle, I'm going to agree with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, transforming into a wolf was looked at as like sorcery. Essentially, which according to witch trial records and confessions, which one of the things that I found, and I'll definitely go into a particular case that is extremely popular amongst these kinds of trials that were going on. Whenever people confessed that they were witches or werewolves or doing something dark or with a pact of Satan, it was usually confessed because they were being tortured.
Yes. Confession under torture. Yeah. I know you're about to mention a couple cases, but yeah,
Yeah,
the
one
truth
in
or just wanting to get the torture over with,
right,
information would come out.
right. So what would happen is that the accused would reportedly they would meet the devil at a crossroads, which is supposed to be like this liminal space between worlds, which is a particularly common setting in European folklore. And the meeting would either take place during a Sabbath or a blood moon, which these are times that are associated with demonic activity most of the time. And so then what would happen is that they would supposedly pledge their loyalty to Satan, they would renounce God, and then they would sign their names in blood. So in exchange, the devil gave them a wolfskin belt, a pelt, or a magical ointment. And what they would do is that they would apply all that stuff on, but the belt was said to instantly transform the wearer into a wolf. The salve was often described as being made from the fat of murdered children, um,
Gosh.
which was something that was often told in the 16th during the confessions in the 16th century. And then the transformation was thought to last until the belt or the salve was removed or washed away. And once the transformation occurred, once all these things were worn or applied, the accused claimed to grow fur, their teeth sharpened, their eyes would glow, and they would become greedy, devouring wolves with eyes that shone like fire. And this is where I want to talk about the case of Peter Stumpp.
Peter Stump.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and take us down that road and
Sure. So Europe, early 1500s, a man named Peter Stump, Stump spelled with two P's. Thought that was weird.
hmm
He was known as the Werewolf of Bedburg in Germany. And what I found, he had 18 victims, and two of them were unborn children, aka pregnant women. And Peter was tried for his heinous crimes and confessed under torture, as we just talked about, to murdering these people. But what was fascinating about why he committed these horrific crimes was that he had been practicing black magic with, who would have guessed it, the devil. And the devil had gifted him, like you said, a magical belt or girdle, which turned him into a werewolf. And when he was in this werewolf form, that's when he would commit these horrific crimes. And what was interesting about this case, under torture and confession, he gave some like generic location where this belt was that he received from the devil, but they never found it.
In fact, I don't think that they found any I don't think there was even any evidence to support any of his crimes. I don't think that they found anything.
I know, it's like they're just like witch, you know.
See, he confessed to killing all these people.
Yeah,
We don't know where the
under
bodies are.
torture. I'll be honest. If you were torturing me, pull my fingernails out and burning me, I'd be okay. I did it. Like,
Right.
even though I
Is there even record of any of those? Like, did he even just say like, "Yep, it was just 18 people," and like never gave their names or anything?
yeah, I feel the judicial system then wasn't a fair process this
No,
today.
you were absolutely guilty before you were guilty and had to be proven innocent. It was not the other way around.
Yes, exactly.
It was like, oh, you mess with Satan? Well, you will going to be off at the stocks until we
Ban
figure out what
him
else to do.
immediately.
Right. To the stocks,
To the stocks, to the flame with you, child.
off with his head.
So
And
maybe
I,
Peter Stumpp wasn't a bad guy, but we don't know.
well, so here's what I also found. This was in the 1500s, okay?
Yeah.
Um, did you see how he was tortured?
I saw some pictures. Now, a lot of those old paintings, for example, from the 1500s, looks like a child drew them. So it's kind of hard, but I, I feel one of the images was he was being stretched, definitely being stretched and
Yes.
poked and burned and all the good
Right.
stuff.
So what while I was researching this topic, what they did was it seemed as though they would kind of like blend in the torture and then they would blend together like how he died. So yeah, they had him on a rack and they stretched his limbs out and he did that until he couldn't take the pain anymore and he was like, "Okay, I did it. I killed 18 people, two of them being pregnant women." And you know, so I and so
They definitely spent more time developing torture devices than they did looking for clean water.
probably because they had some pretty advanced torture
I
devices for
know.
their
Maybe
time,
they
man.
were talking to the devil, getting ideas.
That really wouldn't surprise me given how human nature works.
Hmm.
They would like go out and practice demonic incantations or something, and then whenever someone else does it, they're like, "See, they're demonic."
Like
But
blasphemers.
right, they're
It's just
blasphemers.
same coin, different side.
Right, exactly. So initially, so yeah, he ends up confessing, and what his execution was that they publicly executed him. He so they have this wheel. There's like this wheel where it like breaks your limbs. This wheel. So during his execution, what they did was that they tied him to a large. It was a wagon wheel, and the executioners would use red hot pincers to tear his flesh from his body in 10 different places. It is a tool that's made of two pieces of metal with blunt concave jaws that are arranged like the blades of scissors, and they're used for gripping and pulling things.
Ouch.
So imagine like pliers, but it's used for ripping your skin off. That's what they did to him. And I gotta say, this was actually a really sad case because not only was he tried. His daughter, he was accused of having incestuous relationships with his daughter as well. And his daughter was also accused of doing witchcraft and things like that. So his daughter was actually executed alongside of him.
I believe it. And what I could not find was actual detailed evidence of why they thought he was a werewolf. Like, did they see him in a different form doing something? Now, I know you have on your notes Giles Garnier or Garner, however you want to pronounce it. I know we'll talk about him.
Yeah,
There was some
because I do have a potential explanation for your question.
okay. And I know this other individual had someone saw him in a certain form, but anyways, continue. I want to hear your explanation.
So during the this happened in 1589. This is whenever the execution happened. Keep in mind this is after the Protestant Reformation. Okay. Reformation happened in 1517. Belden, where he lived, was a territory controlled by Catholics. The thing is that this is around a time where Catholics and Protestants were literally killing each other. Like they were at each other's throats. They hated each other. Catholics had a deep, they were very much against Protestantism because of their breakaway from the church. And so around this time, they were trying to come up with the Catholic Reformation or a counter Reformation. And so there is a pamphlet. It was an English pamphlet, I guess it was a book. It was in 1590. It was published, and that pamphlet was called A True Discourse of the Lycanthrope Stube Peter. So in this case, it was Stubbe. So it
Mm-hmm.
was Stupp or Stube, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they described Stumpp's death as an act of Catholic cruelty and superstition. So, what I think is a possibility is that he was a Protestant, his family was Protestant, and somebody was a Catholic, and they probably were very much quarreling with this guy. So they probably took it upon themselves to be like, you know what? I'm accusing this guy of witchcraft, and this is what he got. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised having a difference in is not religious preference, but it's kind of like denomination. Makes me think of denominations, but that idea where there is a religious difference of opinion and telling on his neighbor, starting lies, telling lies.
Yeah, I mean, we do this today. I mean, like, we may not do it to it may not be this extreme, but we absolutely do persecute each other. And
Yeah, slander. And,
and people honestly think that they're justified in doing it
yeah.
because they give themselves this sort of authority of like, oh, well, I have the right to judge you. I have the right to, or I have that authority to know where you're going and things like that. Like, so yeah. And if you even just look, simple YouTube search, there are literally, there are, Protestants, and I'm not saying that Protestants are all like this, um, like, there are Protestants that go and they accost Catholics and Eastern Orthodox folks, and there's no actual conversation that they're trying to actually have. It's just you believe in this and you believe in this, and then there's videos of Catholics that pretty much like do the same thing, and they're like, well, you don't understand this and you don't know about traditions. But it's just like they're both just constantly. at each other's throats. And so um it just doesn't end. It's just not going to end. And we do it every single
Yeah,
day.
it's still going on today. That's why I always get irritated with the um what do you call it? Yeah, denominations in the church. You
Yeah.
know, like I remember several years ago, I went to a Christian bookstore and I was getting a Bible for one of my buddies, and I was having his name embroidered on the side. And this guy came up and introduced himself, and he said, "What are you guys doing here today?" And I explained what I was doing. He's like, "Well, oh," he's like, "Well, I'm Sean or whatever his name was." He's like, "I'm Baptist." It's like, okay, what do you want me to do with that?
Yeah, cool story,
Yeah,
Sean.
Sean. But it's just yeah, it's almost like people want to start a fight, and that I could totally see that if one was Catholic, one was Protestant, they badmouth the other one like he's a werewolf. So like
Yeah.
what? Then you have that like literal like bloodthirsty person who just loves to torture other people. Is like bring him in.
Yeah. You have to let me baptize you. They call me Sean the Baptist.
The Baptist, I'm the baptizer.
I'm Sean the Baptizer, and I'm going to baptize you. And it has to be in the Baptist church, or else you're going to hell.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but we see that, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
not that long ago, I actually knew someone. I'll just go ahead and say it. I had an ex-girlfriend who was very much, she was very much anti-Catholic,
Hmm.
and she actually went to a Church of Christ, which I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I think that because the people that went to that church were actually very sweet people. They were very nice. Her dad even seemed very open-minded to discussion, but she was not. She very much had the whole like anybody that's Catholic is going to hell. They're not Christian,
Hmm.
and you you really can't make a truth claim like that because you have a misunderstanding of something, but I digress. This absolutely I think that that is absolutely what was going on because there for a while, for decades, they were at each other's throats, literally.
I agree.
Now, then we have the curse. You earlier had mentioned, the bite and the full moon and everything, but there for a while, the stories that circulated were not described as a, it was not like, oh, if you get bit, you're turning into a werewolf. You know, this was when the transformation was a punishment. So in earlier Christian Europe, the transformation into a wolf wasn't always a pact with the devil either, but sometimes it was seen as a punishment sent by God or it was a punishment by a witch, which I guess you could say indirectly the punishment was from Satan too. Um,
Yeah, it could be like a divine punishment. Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's some kind of supernatural punishment or yeah,
Hmm.
curse. And it's interesting because there were medieval sermons and chronicles that sometimes described lycanthropy as like a divine curse for sins, which those sins being blasphemy, murder, cannibalism, which is why in some Irish and French tales you'll see um, that priests could curse evildoers into wolf form as a warning to other people. And then other times, yeah, it was, according to these stories, it was God himself who condemned the sinner, which this idea shows up in late medieval legends inspired by the story of Lycan, King Lycan,
Hmm.
where turning into a wolf reveals that person's inner depravity.
Yeah, it's like the example I gave earlier of Beauty and the Beast. You have a sorceress that essentially tests a very wealthy man or a prince, and he fails. She turns him into a werewolf. I don't know what else he would be. And then to get out of his predicament, he has to change his heart.
Yep. You know what? I was actually curious because I remember we were going to go into Peter Stumpp. Um, And before we go further, was there another case that you wanted to mention
Yeah,
really quick?
Giles Garnier,
Yeah, yeah.
1573. It
Yeah,
was
I
a very
wanted to hear
similar
about him.
case. Yeah, really similar. And same idea. He was kind of a hermit type person. And once again, under torture, confessed to killing kids. Except what I noted about him is what I've referenced. Someone saw him with the body of a child while these killings were going on. And they said that when he had the child, he looked like they saw a werewolf creature holding the child, and then they got closer and it was him. So whether that was this witness's imagination seeing this, or there was some real evidence there. And I know we joke, but I'm a full believer in truth is stranger than fiction,
Hmm.
and the probability of werewolves is pretty high. And I know, don't let me forget, we have seen something together. We shared a sighting together several years ago, and we'll get to that. So if you're listening, hang in there. We'll get there. But yeah, it was a very similar case with Gauss Garnier. And do you have anything to add to that? That's what the only significant point I found was that he was actually seen as a werewolf.
Now did he actually go under any execution or trial or anything like that?
Yes, yeah, very similar. Yep, torture trial.
Okay.
He was executed.
Okay. Was it like did he get tortured in like the same way as
I
Peter
believe
Stump
so. I
did?
mean, they were like barely 20 years apart. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, I didn't I was I was very invested in Peter Stump's story, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's a very I didn't want to forget. I wanted to make sure to that you bring up that story.
No, you're good.
So in so this is where we bring in the time of cannibalism. So in medieval France, sin and appetite were linked together, and the wolf symbolized the body's hunger overcoming the soul's restraint. So breaking Lenten fast, so eating meat during Lent was seen as a moral failing, and apparently it was seen as a moral failing so severe that it might leave the mark of the wolf on your soul. And parents would warn their children that eating forbidden meat during the holy days could cause them to become uh Lu Lu Lugaro or Lugaro, I don't know. It's Loupgarous. So Lugaros, um, which werewolves, they would become werewolves. I'm so glad I didn't grow up during that time because they had such extreme examples for why you shouldn't do something.
Oh, I know. It's like the second episode we did with La Llorona,
Yeah,
where they told the story of her to try to deter children or scare them into obedience. And it's like
right,
these are far worse.
right. And those kinds of teachings appeared in a lot of folklore and sermons during like the 13th and the through the 13th and 15th centuries.
Yeah.
Um, and then we also had other curses like birth omens. So you would find this in like Romania and the Balkans, where in Eastern European traditions, what they did was they added like a twist to this. So if you had a birth under the wrong moon or on the wrong day, it could doom a soul
Yeah. The
from
cards
birth.
people were dealt.
Right,
So unfair.
right. So like in Romania, being conceived or born under a full moon was thought to connect the child to a lunar cycle, which is like a mark of instability or possession. And then uh, here in Serbia, Croatia, and Bulgaria, a child born on Christmas Day or between Christmas and New Year's was said to be cursed for being born during the sacred days reserved for Christ, as if it's
Yeah.
stealing,
Stealing the.
stealing his attention.
Yeah.
Dude, there's people that are born on Christmas like now, modern day people that are born on Christmas. Everyone's like, "Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Good for you. Hey, you share a birthday with Jesus." But like back then it was like you were
You are a
born on
thief of the Holy
Christmas.
Spirit.
You thief. You're trying to steal attention. You're being rude. You're trying to steal all the attention.
Pay attention. Um,
Then there was the hereditary curses, like what you had mentioned. I think what we were talking about, like CW stuff, the bloodlines.
oh, bloodlines. Yeah.
Yeah. That's more that's found a lot in like Slavic and Eastern European stories, so that it could be inherited. Um, and then yeah, you pass that on to your kids. And there's a lot of that in Poland, Russia, and the Carpathian region, where families accused of werewolfery might be ostracized. And
Hmm.
then what this again, like what I started talking about earlier, sin, dude. The curse symbolized generational sin. So it's that the idea that like evil could outlive the sinner, you know?
Hmm.
So essentially we look at these things where the cursed werewolf represents this inner guilt that's been made visible, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and so these are all very, very interesting things. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Did you talk about more specifically the bite?
Um, so that is coming up. We
Okay.
are getting we are
Okay.
we are going to talk about that. Right now there's like, there's also the other ways of transforming, which is like potions, um, in early pagan traditions and earlier modern traditions. Transformation into a beast was sometimes was thought to be induced rather than just purely supernatural. So like ointments made from plants such as atropa. Um, I think it's called atropa belladonna. Yeah, so belladonna, wolf's bane, henbane. You'll probably hear more about wolf's bane, especially in like modern day tellings, like Vampire Diaries. They bring up, but all these, uh, and then also flying ointments or transformative salves. Um, so essentially, these plants would contain, they would contain, um, it says atropine and scopolamine, which when these were absorbed through the skin or ingested, it caused hallucinations, delirium, and sometimes convulsions or even paralysis. And some historians would actually suggest that people described as werewolf transformation, uh, that what people described as werewolf transformation could have been the result of a drug-induced trance.
Oh yeah. I mean, you think about the study of botany or
Yes.
herbology, whatever they
Yes.
called it then. I mean, think about the trial and error period, the R&D. Like,
Oh my goodness.
I mean, the poor people that you couldn't. They clearly found out you could not ingest, or it would cause hallucinations or something like that. Those poor souls.
They did not have FDA
No.
approved stuff. Um, so then we have the connection to the moon. That came later. So many,
Hmm.
I didn't see anything really about any sources mentioning the full moon as a trigger, but it was added in folklore as lunar fertility. It was that fert lunar fertility and insanity. All three of those things were merged together. Later on, you'll actually see that if you look up the word lunacy, that word itself actually comes from luna, which is Latin for moon. And ancient physicians actually believed that the full moon could trigger madness or violent behavior. So I thought that was interesting.
My wife always says when the kids are just acting nuts for no reason. It could be a Saturday. We've had a good day, we've played, we've had good food. on, and then they just go nuts. And she always says to me, "Is it a full moon outside?"
Yep.
I'm like,
Hmm.
"Right."
I
It,
heard
it does.
that.
I don't want to be one of those people, but it
Right.
does. It does create like a weird. I don't know how to word this. There is a reaction with a full moon. There is a physical element. There's a spiritual element, and yeah.
You know, that is something that I hear a lot from my friends in the law enforcement community.
Mm.
Whenever
Oh
things,
yeah, yes,
yeah,
yeah. The
whenever,
call volume is through the roof.
yeah, yeah. Oh man, we've been
Yeah.
getting all these stupid calls. Must be a full moon out because you
Yep.
know how people
Yep.
are.
Oh
People call
yeah.
for like the dumbest things.
Yeah.
Somebody's walking in my grass. That's not even really my grass, but they're walking in it and I don't like that. I'm gonna
You
call
look
911.
suspicious.
Right. So yeah, that kind of stuff it just goes to show how ingrained in our culture that kind of stuff has become.
Yeah, and
Very
you're right. How it may be watered down, but it's still present today in our ideology. Yeah, in this
100%.
country. Yeah.
100%. Now we're getting to the bite.
The
So
bite. Dude, you see
so
my canines?
yeah. So what is you were wanting to bring something up. So what did you have on your mind?
So I didn't know if we passed it already, but the specifics of the bite. So what I have for some notes, there is like modern infection versus old transformation. And early transformation from a werewolf, according to stories, was brought on by, as we talked about, black magic, curse from gods, bloodlines. A modern infection would include being bitten, scratched by a werewolf, aka an infected person, or even encountering a werewolf. And it makes me think of the really popular movie franchise Underworld. And I know you've probably seen it. I think we've all had the flu or something, at least been on the couch and watched it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But that movie is very heavy with bloodlines and like sects of vampires and wealthy ones and all this kind of stuff. And even down to like hybrid werewolves. So it's interesting how we've gone from, oh, it's brought on by rituals or curses to now it's established these creatures exist, and if you interact with one or whatever, you come across one, you could be infected and turn into the same thing, same fate.
Yeah. And to add on to your comment about Underworld, let's face it, a lot of the time us younger males watched it for Kate Beckinsale.
Kate
You know,
Beckinsale, she was the best vampire ever. She's the only vampire I've ever rooted for.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, now that I think about it, because
yeah,
I hated vampires. I thought they were dumb. They
dude.
didn't scare me. I just thought they were
Yeah,
stupid.
they're just dumb. It's funny if you rewatch the first one. I think his name was Michael. I think that's his name. So he's the guy that ends up turning into the hybrid later in the film. Spoiler alert.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
if you rewatch it, the entire film, he's getting dragged along with Kate Beckinsale, which he's probably okay with because she's a beautiful woman. But his face the whole time was like, "What is going on?" Like the way, the last thing you knew, he's like hanging out on a lunch break, and then he's on this underground adventure with these werewolves and lichens, and they fight, and it's
Yeah.
just a comical from an adult point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott Speedman is his name.
Yeah, Scott Speedman. Yeah.
Yeah. I did like him. So yeah, the bite, the aspect of the bite, that actually didn't come into that was actually not a thing until the 19th century.
Hmm.
There was like this gothic movement in the literary world that had this reimagining of the werewolf. And
That was probably about
uh
the same time as the moon element too, wasn't it?
I think so.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because there was so I did kind of look into some of these things because there was there was this writer by the name of George W.M. Reynolds. He had written this book called Wagner the Werewolf, werewolf being spelled Wehr and then wolf, so Wagner the Werewolf. So,
The fuck?
um, so like they would have this they would in their novels they would merge the supernatural curse with the new scientific understanding of disease and madness. And so you ended up seeing this rise to this idea of werewolf, of this like werewolf or like the lycanthropy as an infection. And I think that was also heavily influenced by rabies
Mm-hmm.
outbreaks, people
Mm-hmm.
seeing people turning mad after getting
Mm-hmm.
bit by that stuff. And so then by the early 20th century, which is when Hollywood came into the picture, baby, with the Wolfman, and they
Mm-hmm.
ended up giving you that classic line of whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives becomes a werewolf himself. And that kind of, I think that kind of paved the way for every other Hollywood thing. The only, of course, like I said earlier, the only people that I think kind of broke away from that were the losers that made Twilight and Vampire Diaries, but whatever.
Sorry. I don't even know what the author's name is.
Of Twilight,
Yeah.
Stephanie Meyer.
Stephanie Meyer.
I read all those books sarcastically. Just kidding.
I
No, I
was
did
like, there's
not.
no way.
No, I did not. So yeah, essentially the curse would become it became contagious. It's the this trope of the werewolf being punished by God and transformed through ritual that stopped. And so now they became victim to a werewolf bite.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see that in a lot of more modern stories or even movies. And then we also have we're going to go into returning to human form.
Mm-hmm.
So as we learned earlier, taking off that belt was what helped, or maybe getting rid of the curse is what transformed you back into human. But now it's but now it's either being wounded or killed, or the full moon going away is how you
Yeah, it
turn
would
back into a
turn off
human.
the transformation. Yeah.
Yes. Silver bullets. That one was interesting to me. So
Mm-hmm.
the concept of the silver bullet, or at least um not the concept, but the idea of silver bullets being used to bring down the creature, that was actually first mentioned in 18th century tales from France. And it was a story called The Beast of Gevaudan.
It's
Which,
really intriguing that a very specific weapon, like the compound of a weapon, was mentioned.
right. Well, apparently, the Beast of Gevaudan was a real creature that terrorized a French country, uh, not a French country, a French countryside, and it was believed to be supernatural, but it's probably like a crazy animal or something. So a lot of werewolves. Whenever we're talking about returning to the human form, there was and I think this has to deal with the. So we do have silver bullets being one aspect of it. Um, but as far as the explanations for other things, so um, there's an Icelandic story, or I guess it's called the Icelandic Volsunga saga, which was a 13th century story where two men had discovered wolf pelts that would transform anyone who wears them into a wolf. And when the pelts were removed, the spell was broken. And then in other medieval stories, the werewolf's salvation came through repentance. So if the cursed soul acknowledged his sin before sunrise, then he could be restored. And the dawn light, whenever the sun's coming up, that symbolized divine forgiveness. But of course, not every story ends that way. And a lot of other tales, they're more depressing and violent, where the werewolf could be freed or destroyed only if the body was wounded or killed, which would be a la Silver. Now, the idea behind Silver is that silver was a symbol of divine power and truth. And you'll see that in Christian folklore, it represented incorruptibility, which is the same reason priests used silver chalices and why there's an explanation that Judas's 30 pieces of silver became a token of guilt.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yes, so striking the beast with silver wasn't just a physical act, it was essentially an exorcism. And it was
Mm.
restoring the boundary between human and monster.
I had a note where the reason why silver was used was because it would stop or pause the regenerative properties of the disease. So, werewolf couldn't heal and a werewolf couldn't stay in that form if they were exposed to silver. So, hence the silver bullets, a silver dagger, whatever. It would be forced to return back to its human form.
There's also a movie called Silver Bullet with
Is it
Corey
about
Haim.
killing werewolves?
Well, it's about a town being haunted by one, and I think it's Corey Haim and Gary Busey.
Very BC.
Rest in peace, Corey Haim. So I would actually like to get into the legend of the Beast of Gevaudan, which in French is La Bête de Gevaudan. So with that story, there were over 100 people who were killed across the French countryside by what was described as a massive wolf-like creature, but it had a man's face and the strength of 10 men, and it couldn't be stopped, not even by the king's soldiers or hunters. And there was a rumor that spread that it wasn't an animal at all, but a cursed man or a demon, somebody who was punished by God. And apparently there were reports from that time that claimed that only silver bullets could kill it. And the first recorded appearance of that idea is in writing by Jean Chastel, allegedly that he was a hunter and he apparently fashioned bullets from silver and delivered the fatal shot heard around the world in 1767. But I'm sure it was bull. It was BS, but it stuck. I mean, they took it, they believed it.
Yeah.
But from then on, that was the explanation that they accepted it like, yep, silver. And it was so accepted that Hollywood still uses that to this day.
Yeah, they do. Yep. Especially in Underworld. All the vampires had all these automatic weapons with special silver bullets,
Hmm.
and it still didn't work. It just slowed the lichens down.
Yep. Yeah, people, it's very interesting how people take ideas and they either adjust them and make them better or they completely crap all over them,
Hmm.
like Twilight.
We need a tally board for Twilight hits.
Dude, if
Ding.
you're listening to this and you have a beer, turn this into a drinking game and how many times we trash on Twilight.
Yeah, take a drink every time we crash Twilight.
I just, dude, I cannot stand it. I can't stand it.
It's pretty bad.
So we're gonna go into the science and the psychology. So, have you ever heard of the case of Austin Harif?
I have not.
That story is absolutely wild. This takes place in Florida. It was Tequesta, Florida. It happened in 2016. So there was this. So obviously, Austin Harif is the kid. He was a teenager at the time. I think he was in college. He had gone out with his family to eat dinner, and he was already acting super weird. And he would say, like, whenever he stormed out of the restaurant, he would say that he was invincible and that he was a dog. And he had actually even at one point claimed to be half dog, half man, which there is a legitimate medical um diagnosis called clinical lycanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
where people are believe that they're turning into, whether it be a wolf, a dog, or really any other animal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the interesting thing is that whenever they tested him with a toxicology report, they didn't find any bath salts. They didn't find synthetic drugs. They only found some marijuana, which marijuana is not going to make you act that way. Which also leads me to believe that he probably had like some kind of, I think he probably had some kind of mental break, dude, if I'm being
So
honest.
why was he in police custody?
Well, what he ended up doing,
I see here it says he attacked an older couple, John
yes,
Stevens and Michelle
yeah,
Stevens, in their garage.
yes,
911 was called. He was found biting the face off of John
yes.
Stevens.
So Austin Harif, he ended up going into police custody after he had left the restaurant, and he ended up finding this couple by the name of John Stevens and his wife Michelle Stevens, and he attacked the man and the woman, but like he went into like this extremely crazy like
Berserker mode,
fury.
dude.
Yeah, he became, yeah, berserker mode. He went into berserker mode, and he actually started to bite the face off of the John Stevens. And the cops came on scene, they were trying to get him off. They had a very hard time handling him. Um, but yeah, he just attacked it. And yes, he ended up killing the both of them. He killed John Stevens and he killed his wife, Michelle.
And
Yeah.
so you mentioned the toxicology report. No explanation then.
No, none.
That is bizarre.
I mean, you're not going to act that way with marijuana.
I wonder, is he still serving right now? Serving time?
So that's where, and this is probably where friends and family of this couple are probably going to get pissed off, but essentially, he was later diagnosed with acute psychotic episodes,
Okay.
which would be consistent with schizophrenia and
Hmm.
bipolar, which, as I was reading this, schizophrenia did pop up into mind, but he was actually found not guilty by reason of insanity. And that was in November of 2022, but he was
Hmm.
committed to a mental health facility for further treatment.
Hmm.
And I guess he's still there.
Yeah, I see him here. I'm looking at some images of him. His before picture, he looks like a very normal person. Now, I
Yeah.
see here in custody, he's got a look on his face that's pretty bizarre. It's pretty scary. But the before pictures, he looks very normal.
Yeah. And a
Uh,
handsome kid too.
Yeah,
Like
he's a good looking kid.
yeah, like he had, like, it really seemed like he had a lot of, like, a good life ahead of him, and he just,
Yeah.
I have no idea what the heck happened to this kid.
Yeah, that's really bizarre. For a 19-year-old to just all of a sudden have a mental breakdown and attack two older people. I did want to mention that with the science, I remember when I was younger, I saw a quote unquote real werewolf in the Guinness Book of World Record. And I had to look it up to see it again, but it was a guy that had this disease where he grew really thick hair, not only on his body, but on his face too. And he was
Hmm.
nicknamed the Wolfman. His name was Victor Gomez. It was a really rare condition, but he was not an actual werewolf. He did not have any supernatural powers either. Sorry, Victor.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That must have been that was probably a really old yeah, I remember seeing that. And it's funny because he actually looks like Lon Chaney's Wolfman
Yes.
from the
Yes.
from the movie.
Yeah, he really does.
Dude, but you know what? That is a common thing. Um it seems like because there's a lot of other cases I'm looking at on Google Images, and there's a lot of other people that have that same thing. They probably could have been extras in Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox.
It's spreading.
That's right. So yeah, if you want to see the case about Austin Harriff, there actually is a story told by Mr. Ballin where he goes way more in depth about it.
That'd be a good one.
Oh yeah, it's great, and the way he tells the story is amazing. It's a really well and drawn out story. So, werewolves in pop culture. We've mentioned the Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
We've mentioned the American Werewolf in London, which
Twilight.
yeah, Twilight.
Hashtag Team Jacob.
Here's my thing, and because we're on that topic now, my thing is, I don't know if Twilight was meant to be horror or what it or whatever it is. Whenever you say werewolf and you show me a coyote, that makes me very frustrated. Or if like I don't know, man, like if I want to see effort, I want to see legitimate effort. I'm gonna tell you, there was, I believe, again, modern day Wolfman movie. It was literally just called The Wolfman. I think it came out last year.
Was it with Benicio del Toro?
No,
Okay.
I think this is a Bloomhouse movie actually. This was a really good watch. I will be honest with you, I appreciated, yeah, it was a Bloomhouse movie. They did a really good job, I think. The werewolves looked amazing. They built it up with suspense very well. They didn't take they actually didn't take too long with it. They actually kind of show you what the transformation process for the Wolfman is, which is also really nice. Um, really well done, honestly. And I am surprised because movies now just kind of suck, but this one was really well done.
Hmm.
But not a whole lot of other stuff does that. So, yeah, I mean, I just get really disappointed. I mean, I remember whenever Van Helsing came out with Hugh Jackman,
Yeah.
I don't think it did well in the box office. I think it actually did terribly, but you know what? I appreciate that movie.
Yeah. That's one of my go-to movies. Me and my buddies used to watch that back in the day.
Yeah, I love it. I
Because
watched it
he
not that
was,
long ago.
yeah, Van Helsing was a monster slayer, but he was actually a bloodline of an actual werewolf, which he was the protagonist and the antagonist was Dracula, which there's a big boss fight in the end, which is pretty cool.
But did you say that Van Helsing was with a bloodline of werewolves?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, he was a descendant, and that's how he
Mm,
turned into a werewolf in the end and had the strength to fight Dracula.
No, so actually, with that movie in particular, what it was that Van Helsing was actually the Archangel Gabriel, and he had been sent to Earth, and his memory had been wiped out, and he became a werewolf because whenever they were in that carriage trying to escape from the girl's werewolf brother, he somehow ended up getting bit, and so they go to the castle so then that way he can fight Dracula because in order to defeat Dracula, a werewolf has to be the one to kill Dracula.
Dude, you're right. I didn't remember that at all. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the werewolf they caught in the net and he got scratched and
Hmm.
the Dracula calls him Gabriel at one point, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he was he actually his persona is Van Helsing, but he really is Gabriel the Angel.
Oh, dude, yeah, good memory. It's been a while.
Yeah. Good movie. I mean, way better than way better than the crap that they produce now. And the transformation scenes were really good too.
Or for being a film back in the early 2000s, it was pretty good. It
Yeah,
still stands up today. I
I
wanted
would
to
say
give it.
so.
Oh yeah, I want to give an honorable mention to. There was a movie called Dog Soldiers that came out in 2002. Did you ever see that one?
No.
So that was kind of like an independent film, and I don't know what channel me and my buddies saw this on, but it was terrifying. So what I remember, it took place, I believe, in Scotland, and it was a group of either Scottish special forces. I thought they were on some kind of training exercise. But anyways, they come across dog soldiers, which I think is as the audience member, you assume they're werewolves, but there's some kind of experiment or something, or they were former special soldiers that were turned into werewolves, but they're called dog soldiers. It is a hardcore. It's filmed really really different and it's kind of scary, but yeah, really intense movie, Dog Soldiers 2002. I highly recommend it if you're in a mood for like a scary movie. But yeah, I just remember that one. That one I had a hard time going to sleep after watching that. That one spooked me. When I would walk home from my friend's house at nighttime in the summer, I'd always be looking over my shoulder for a dog soldier.
I will check it out.
Hmm.
That actually sounds really interesting. I saw some pictures and that's what I like to see, the kind of werewolves that they're showing there.
Yeah, they're the big ones.
We're going to go into real world sightings, and this will be our last topic of the night. Did you do any reading on the Beast of Bray Road?
I did not.
Okay. So the earliest report for this sighting, which Bray Road is in Wisconsin, and the earliest sighting that was reported was in 1936 by a groundskeeper at the St. Coletta School for Exceptional Children, which is located in Jefferson County. And there was, I'm sorry, it was a night watchman, not a groundskeeper. It was a night watchman by the name of Mark Shackleman, and he claimed to see a wolf-like humanoid digging or prowling around near a Native American burial mound. And whenever he tried getting closer so that he could get a better look, it fled. And he would later return to the site at dawn, and he would end up seeing the creature again. Only this time, the creature actually stuck around. And he said that this creature was covered with dark or black hair and it stunk. It had a terrible odor. It was like the odor of long dead meat. And he said that the eyes looked right into him and it made a sound. And the way that the sound was is it sounded like a three-syllable growl. It was low and mean, and he said it sounded like he says it sounded like Gadara, with the way that it sounded. And so it sounded like
Hmm.
sounds kind of Japanese if you ask me. But uh that's what it sounded. It was a three syllable growl like that. And he is also quoted saying, "Then I did the only thing I could do. I prayed to God to save me, and it turned and slowly walked away." And for a long time, he stood there with that bad smell still lingering in the air. He said another prayer of thankfulness, and he never saw the thing again. Now, here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is that that growl, Gadara, that he heard, that name or that word has been tied to the city of Gadara, which is located on the eastern sea of Galilee, and it is used interchangeably as they describe three different names, but it's part of the same region, which is the Gadarenes, the Gerasenes, and the Gergesenes. The Gadarenes is referred to as Gadara. The Gerasenes is referred to as Gerasa or Gerasa, and the Gergesenes is referred to as Jurgisa. And this is the same location in the Gospels where Jesus exorcises the demoniacs.
Very
Pretty,
interesting.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
But the legend gained even more traction in the 80s and 90s, which is when numerous locals reported seeing a creature about 6 to 7 feet tall, covered with fur, hair, glowing eyes, sometimes walking upright, sometimes on all fours. And the reports include that the beast had allegedly left claw marks on vehicles and was seen eating roadkill and appeared at dusk or in misty conditions along rural roads like Bray Road. Very, very cool stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
To that case, no, but I thought we could tell our story here of what happened to us several years ago.
Yes, absolutely.
Jorge and I have been friends for a number of years, and several years ago, we worked at the same employer, and we both worked the graveyard shift. And when we had free time, we would visit and talk. And one night, we were standing outside of one of the buildings on the campus, and we're just chit chatting. And this happened to be at the witching hour because it was either 3 or 3:30 in the morning. And Jorge turns his head and says, "What is that?" And I look at him, and then I look over, and what we're both looking at is the entrance of this place. And this is a college campus. And what we see, there's the front entrance with bushes, and what I interpret as like a naked man walking on all fours. And then when it's trotting like a wolf would, like but a naked man. Like I saw his bare bottom, and then as it passes through the bushes and goes to the light, it turns into a massive wolf. Now, when you initially said, "What is that?" I caught that, and my mind is processing what's happening right now. And I thought, is that a mountain lion? First of all, because that skin like flesh texture. And then when it popped out, it was a wolf. And so naturally we go, holy crap. And we chase it. So
Yeah.
we run after it. It trots. I remember it trotted across the street because there's a main road in front of this campus. And we were probably about, we shoot. It's probably about, 60 yards away. That thing was massive.
Yeah,
Now
it
I've
was giant.
seen wolves in real life, but I mean, this thing was massive. And then as we run at it, it continues to run across the street, and across the street there was a health clinic. And I remember you had your flashlight, you shone your flashlight at it, and it turned around. It was pretty far away from us, but it just turned around and looked at us. We could see the glow from its eyes, and it just had a huge diamond shaped head, and it looked right at us. And we were having a hard time processing what was going on. But what stuck out to me the most was we don't have wolves around here. We have coyotes, we have bobcats, we have foxes, but we don't have wolves. And we definitely have not seen, dog excuse me, coyotes come this close to where we were. But it just to this day I rethink about what we saw, and it I saw a naked man like trotting on all fours. I saw his head. He goes through the bushes and he turns into a wolf. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, so I remember whenever I'd said, "What is that?" or even after the whole thing, I even told you I was like, "Dude, I thought I saw a naked guy
Yeah.
like standing over there or
Yeah.
crawling,
Yeah.
over there." And it's weird. I still can't really process it. I don't. I still question what the hell we saw.
Yeah. And both of us we were sober. We weren't, we were tired, but we weren't dog tired. And we were just having a very casual conversation of whether it was a pleasant evening or night. And we were not in the mood, how you can put yourself in the spooky mood. We were not in that mood. But the fact that I would say if it was a werewolf or something, I really don't know how to describe it, but the fact that we both saw a naked man on all fours, and then he turned into a wolf when it came into the light. And the wolf's color of its fur was kind of like gray and chalky, you know.
Yeah,
But before it was like flesh colored, like a just a man, and he was big
right.
too. I
Yeah,
mean, just wild. I mean, to this day, I cannot believe that.
I can definitely agree that whenever it came into the light, it was a wolf,
Mhm.
and then it just kind of stayed that way even
Yeah,
after it left.
yeah, it just stayed
Um,
that way. Yeah.
so I don't know.
You
Did
know what's
we?
interesting is that when you noticed it, because I was facing you, if you would have, if what we would have saw, 10 seconds before that, because that thing would trotted right beside us, you know, it would have been probably more like 30 yards away or 20 yards, too close.
Yeah,
But I mean, it to me, it was like a naked man running
right.
on all fours, and then he turned into a wolf, and then he was gone.
So did we come across a skinwalker?
We came across something.
We came across something.
Yeah.
So very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah. It was
So
very informative, very educational.
absolutely. So, I would still like to point out that if anybody has any kind of scary story, we would absolutely love to hear from you. You can message us and send in your story at I can't move podcast at yahoo.com. If you don't want to send in your submission by typing it out through email, you can have a recording and you can email the recording to us. We would absolutely love to hear that from you. Just please do. We want to hear from you guys.
Yes, we do.
We want interaction. Other than that, that has been today's episode of I Can't Move. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and comment. And we will see you guys again soon. Peace.
Peace.